Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be swapping some keycaps and switches on some of my mechanical keyboards. We're going to be starting with my Keychron K4V2. This is my daily driver keyboard that I use for work, and it's currently running brown switches, which sound like this. We're going to be switching this to some blue switches. There are three basic types of mechanical keyboard switches. They're called linear, tactile, and clicky. Linear switches they just go straight down, you just press the button. They're better for gaming. Tactile switches, like these browns here, they have a bump in them so you can physically feel when you've actually actuated the switch. And clicky switches, like the blue ones we'll be switching into this, give an actual clicky sound when you hit that tactile bump and actuate the switch. Now, this is the keyboard I use for work, and it's mostly typing. I've tried some gaming on this keyboard, and frankly, I didn't really enjoy gaming on a tactile keyboard. It's just not a pleasant sensation. But I do want the positive affirmation of, no, I really did click the button when I press it. Plus, it's very satisfying to type on it. This is not a standard 100% keyboard. This is something like a 96% or something. I always wanted to have the clicky switches, but my living situation at the time would not allow me to do that. So, it's an overdue upgrade for sure. One of the things that I actually like about this keyboard is the south-facing RGB, which is going to work really well for the pudding cup style keycaps that I purchased for it. I'm very excited about this. So I'm laying these keycaps out like this because I want to not lose track of where everything goes on the keyboard. Again, it's not a super standard layout. Alright, now I'm blowing it out with a blower, which I've spared you the noise of. This thing has been used for years. There's a bunch of crusty crud and crumbs in it. And now we've got a toothbrush. My hope was that I could clean out everything in the top of the keyboard so that when I take the switches out, nothing would fall in to the actual PCB underneath. We'll see how that works out. All right. Now it's time to start pulling the switches. So the way the switches actually come out, there's a little tab on it. Let me show you. There's an actual little tab on there that you can click into with the removal tool that came with the keyboard. So yeah, one of the things I really like about this keyboard is that you can hot swap everything in it. That's why I did it, because I hoped someday I would be able to upgrade to the clicky switches. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Sometimes this can be a little tricky to get out of there, but they'll come eventually, right? The other reason I decided to lay these keycaps out in front of me is so that when I get the new ones, I can lay them all out and just start placing them on the new switches, which is going to make it a lot easier. But yeah, there's a little tab on the top of the switch that you just need to unhook. Oh, got a sprinkle. A loose sprinkle, everyone. There's a little tab that you unhook from the metal part over the PCB, and that releases the actual switch from the case, and then you still got to wiggle it out of there because there's still the three prongs that are poking into the PCB, and they can get kind of sticky too, especially when you've been pounding away on this keyboard for so long like I have. Alright, nearing the end here. I don't actually have a use for these brown switches at the moment. I might find something for them in the future. Who knows? Alright, one more run with the toothbrush, and it's time to put in our blue switches. These switches are made by Keychron, so if I knew they'd fit. The stem on these is pretty different from the ones that were in there before. They have these little stabilizers on the sides of it, so it's not just a stem sticking into the keycap. That's going to make it feel a lot more stable and professional and just a better feel overall. So the actual act of sticking these in is pretty straightforward. You just make sure the pins poke into the correct places on the board and that the switch itself clicks into the metal and you're good to go. So something I didn't know when I was doing this was that the RGB actually passes through the switch from the PCB. I assumed the switches themselves had some sort of RGB, but they don't. Alright, time to start matching keycaps. Now, since this is not a 104 standard keyboard size, there's going to be some switches that are a little, some keycaps, sorry, that are a little different. Like the shift key is a slightly different size and things like that because of the way the layout works on this keyboard. I decided to stick with an OEM profile on this because I just felt like I would not want to change that. I wanted to stick with what I was used to on this keyboard so it would feel the same but look cooler and have the clicky sound so it would sound cooler but ultimately feel the same. One of the snags I ran into is that I wasn't able to find a keycap that was going to perfectly work for the RGB key in the top right corner of the keyboard. That is not a normal key, it's something exclusive to these keyboards. So I ultimately settled on using a different row 1 keycap, but, well, you'll see my struggle here. Alright, time to start putting keycaps on. So as I said, these are the pudding cup style keycaps, which will really let the RGB shine through. I'm really excited to see what this looks like. Oh, found out one of my keys wasn't quite right. This set also came with some white ones. I don't love that. I wanted everything to be the same color. This keyboard originally came with some alternates for some of the keycaps for accent colors, but it didn't force me to use those accent colors, which I was really appreciative of. But realistically, I like having all the same color keycap on my keyboards. So yeah, that one wasn't going to work. I tried the original one. That looked silly. Tried the alternate color one. That also looked silly. And ultimately just settled on using a speaker one. Something that would fit in row 1 with the right profile and height and everything and not feel unnatural. It's the wrong symbol, but I'll know what it does. At least it will look right. Alright, time to pack all this stuff away. I try to keep the keycaps in their set, separate from each other. But not at all organized, just throw it all in there. Alright, time to clear up the workspace and get started on my next keyboard. Alright. I hate these accent colors and they did not give me alternates with this set. This is my Keychron K10 Pro, which I just purchased for the express purpose of gaming with it. Using a 100% keyboard with gaming is a choice that I probably should not have made. We're not swapping the switches on this one, though. We actually have the right switches. These are reds, which are linear switches, and I'm going to stick with those. They feel fine. They're great for gaming. But I'm going to switch out the keycaps purely to deal with, like, I could deal with the 2 different colors. I could not deal with 3 different colors. That was just not a thing I was willing to do. Something I didn't know about this keyboard when I purchased it, and would have made a different choice if I did. It's not anyone's fault. It's on the site. I just didn't see it. Is that these have north-facing RGB. So they're not compatible with a lot of shine-through keycaps. Certainly not compatible with those pudding cup style ones that I just used in the other keyboard. Yeah, I had to make some choices. So I couldn't get something in the right profile that would work with north-facing RGB, and it was just unpleasant. I decided to keep the keycaps that came with it for the special keys up at the top. I just felt that the black and gray would work well enough, and I was not going to find enough row 1 keycaps that would look right with it, so I decided to just keep it as is. Gotta find all our keycaps and put them in the right spots. I like doing this ahead of time because it allows me to not have to refer back to my phone, and I can just put them on. I can find the right sizes for everything, line everything up. So the profile I ended up going with these keycaps is something called ISA, which I've never used before, but it's a pretty aggressive profile compared to OEM, where it's very dipped in the middle. But I figured that would actually help with gaming a little bit because it would mean the travel that I'd have to do to physically actuate the Switch would be a little easier, shorter. Faster response times, right, gamers? All right, here we go. This is much easier once you have everything all aligned. Just plop them in and we're good to go. I would later discover that the spacebar was in upside down and correct that. That was a small mistake. It's kind of hard to tell when everything's dark. Found the missing keycap. And we're all packed up. Alright, let's see what the RGB looks like. This is the K4. Beautiful with those pudding cup style caps. And this is the K10. This actually came out better than I was afraid it would with these north-facing RGBs. Alright, thanks for stopping by, everybody. That's all for today. Bye!